terms of a brief introduction to myself, I'm John Furner. I'm the founder of ResultsPositive. Been helping organizations with IT transformation initiatives for the last 20 plus years, and really look forward to an engaging discussion today on how organizations can help with transformation, but also, more importantly, how can they help improve the overall outcomes of their financial investments. Andrew, would you like to give a brief introduction? And if you wouldn't mind, maybe just talk a little about our partnership, and then we'll jump right in.
Absolutely. Thanks, John, and thanks everybody for attending, and those of you that will be listening to the recordings. My name is Andy Gallimore. I actually started with RoundTower probably about 4 years ago and started our ServiceNow practice. Prior to that, however, one of the reasons that makes this topic a pretty important and useful topic for me is a lot of what John's going to be sharing today is things that I had done in my previous life with transformations and agile transformations, things of that nature that will help with the planning cycles, things of that nature that are very, very real in our industries. Our partnership with ResultsPositive has been tremendous. They're a great partner. RoundTower, we try to take a very holistic approach to the platform and its capabilities, and we have developed a great partnership here with ResultsPositive focus on the ITBM suite, which again is very near and dear to my heart, and looking forward to helping clients holistically as we tie in service management and IT business management and the other aspects of the platform that all have good continuity. This webinar is definitely for a major component of the platform that we have a heavy investment in and desire to continue to work with ResultsPositive to help us get some business outcomes for our clients.
Yeah, Andy, thank you so much. Thanks for your leadership and partnership, and definitely been able to deliver some very nice outcomes for our joint customers. So what we wanted to focus on today is really kind of answering the question, where should we invest? And how will those investments drive benefits to the organization? So on the left-hand side here, when we're first talking about what are we investing in, that's key. What we see a lot of organizations, they don't have visibility into where they're spending their money today. Now, in these type of trying times, all of a sudden everything's put on hold and you can quickly see that dry up. But in most cases, there's a lack of visibility. The organization executives don't understand where they're investing, what the resources are working on, and that can really cause a drain in the organization and prevent some of those strategic investments from being implemented, and thereby driving change in the organization as well as maintaining that market competitiveness. So the next area is then once we have visibility, that gives us the ability to start determining what should we stop, what should we put on hold, those type of really key decisions. A lot of times in IT, when things get funded, they just continue. So it's really important to identify which one should we stop, just like with an investment portfolio. Next, it's really key to make sure that what we're going to invest in or what we actually approve to invest in aligns to our business strategy. Here again, in today's time, our strategy might be a little in flux, or immediately our strategy is we need to go digital. Many organizations were starting down the digital transformation path. Many had kind of been there, but now I kind of see that as a digital imperative. Everyone needed to shift and work from home. What's going to be the new business models? What's going to be our strategy? We need to invest in those things versus the old way of running our business. And then once we've identified strategy and we've identified those investments, how do we protect those? How do we make sure that as we manage those initiatives and we bring those capabilities online, are they going to really help us achieve our desired outcomes? So it's really important to understand how we can manage that work, whether it be traditional, whether it be agile, whether it be hybrid. How do we best protect those investments? So end to end, it's all about how can we help you optimize your investments to drive business outcomes. So I'd like to start off here in a lot of my work in the past doing a lot of IT transformations. One key area that would drive 20 to 30% of overall savings, sometimes that was cost avoidance or able to shift to invest in other things, was this whole idea of demand management. And it's a funnel for a reason. We want to really focus on categorizing, prioritizing, estimating, understanding the benefits of the different initiatives. At the same time, we want to balance and identify how much we want to invest in, grow the business, improve the bottom line, delight customers, but just run the business as well. And so we've got to make those hard decisions. We're not going to do everything, but we're going to take our investments and apply it to those really rewarding opportunities for our organization. So as you can see here, as we're making those selections, we might look for investments that are going to decrease the run cost. We want to improve productivity. A big key there is automation of workflow. That Andy might have been working with you across the different workflows on the ServiceNow platform. A great opportunity to really streamline as well as really start to increase customer satisfaction just by having a different user experience. Next, we want to look at this transformation. How are we going to transform as part of this digital imperative? How are we going to change our business? We need to invest in those things and make sure we invest in those in the right way. So once we have a chance to look at those and make those decisions, we're going to make sure it's tied to our strategy, and then we're going to start doing the execution. Make sure we've got the tools, methods, and processes in place so that we can quickly release those solutions to our customers internally, wherever it makes sense, based upon the goals and objectives of those investments. And then we want to continually look at measuring the outcomes. And so that's really key. One thing that we're really focused on now is if we're going to invest in something, we need to know the outcome, and then we need to be able to track that outcome as well. A couple of things to highlight here, and what we're focusing on today is the IT business management suite of workflows, capabilities, and processes, as Andy alluded to. But what's really nice here with ITBM, it starts to bring the different components together. As you can see here on the left-hand side, you can really have an ability to make sure you have all those great ideas. How are we going to approach the digital imperative? How are we going to approach another way of interacting with our customers? Also, in today's environment, what's our applications? Which applications support this whole digital way of engaging? Which application gaps do we have for this digital engagement? Same thing here with our underlying technologies. Here again, our business capabilities are going to change. So all within the IT business management solution, you can manage these items, these associated workflows, and then you can have those flow into an overall process so we can identify what are the right areas to invest in. As you see this flow, you can definitely start off with the idea to demand. You don't have to follow this flow. So you could actually start over here and have a demand portal and go right into demand if that's appropriate for your organization. But there is a lot of power here from idea to demand. We can get a lot of ideas in, then we're going to flesh out and determine which ones are the best ideas before we spend time and effort, because it does take time and effort to actually analyze and create business cases, create solution estimates, and that takes capacity away as well as financial resources away from actually delivering and driving business outcomes. So next we'll go into that demand process. We'll go into strategic planning, look at the way we can fund those, really determine which ones we can work on based upon our financial and resource constraints. Then we're able to manage our strategic operational work. Key differentiator here is being able to manage that waterfall, agile, hybrid type of work. Most organizations have a flavor of each. It also supports the scaled agile framework as well. And then when we complete that work, because we're on the platform, we can use the change requests that you already might be using today as part of IT service management. So you can make sure that all of these changes are going to be updated appropriately so you can manage and run these new capabilities. You can also then tie it into release as part of, say, your DevOps initiatives as an example. So you can kind of see here it supports this end-to-end value. And what I wanted to do next is start to highlight how you can get access to this value across the different workflows and different parts of the platform on ServiceNow. So typically we want to start off with our strategy goals. There's also the capability here to do investment funding. Many of you might be getting and receiving various stimulus funding. What are you going to do with that funding? Obviously, a lot of that will be to cover employees, but what are we going to have them work on? What's going to drive value? So here we can start to see this whole innovation, this ideation process We can make that as a focus for the organization. That way we can be a leader in our industry. So the solution supports this innovation portal. Ideas can be generated. Socially, those ideas can be evaluated and feedback can be determined. You evaluate those will become these demands, those project proposals, creating your overall business case. But you're also going to have other inputs here as you're starting to look at your application portfolio, those capabilities, because that's going to drive needs to drive demands, right? We might have aging technologies. That's going to drive a need to replace those, as an example. Next here, that demand is going to flow into this demand management process that we were just talking about. How do we evaluate? How do we start our investment planning to really focus on taking these funds that we have available and applying them to different projects or products or services or applications that we want to invest in? Next, then we can manage it here in the different work methodologies. What's appropriate for the different teams, for the different tool sets that we have. You can manage here the different backlog here within the platform as well. You'll notice here that ITBM is in the green color. ITOM and IT Asset Management here is kind of the reddish color, and the ITSM here in the orange color. Then we can see here, so once we actually complete that and we manage it and we deliver it, then we need to continually support those capabilities as part of Run the Business. We can see that typical process. And then last but not least, with some of the recent releases, they now have the DevOps capability to help you with that continuous delivery, continuous integration. So this kind of starts to highlight the power of the platform. Typically what we've seen with organizations that have adopted one or two pieces of the platform, at some point the CIO is going to ask the question, why are we not using ServiceNow to manage our investments, to manage our projects, to manage our development activities, as well as what we might have started off with IT operations management, service management, HR, customer service. Andy, anything you'd like to highlight? I know you love the full idea to delivery mindset and methodology, so I'll kind of open it up there and see if you have anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me here is, my history from an enterprise process perspective, ServiceNow being able to drive end-to-end value on a single database and be able to have that continuity. A lot of companies talk about traceability, and it's a factor for them that they're always trying to get to, and they've got spreadsheets for traceability, and they've got all these different things. ServiceNow is really the only platform that is your traceability matrix throughout this entire life cycle. So, it's the one platform in the world that can actually do this full end-to-end view without integration to another platform. So that's a major key for me. And the other piece that I think is really interesting from this is when you start looking at the application portfolio, really a lot of times we have our architecture groups that are separate from our investment groups, that are separate from these other groups. This actually allows you to bring all of that data together into one place strategically, so that all those different various groups can now plan together and actually create a one singular roadmap for success, right? What applications are redundant? Which ones do we need to sunset? Those are all part of the factor that are typically managed outside of a platform, by an enterprise architecture group or something else. This actually allows one, vision for a company that's not disjointed. And those C-levels, the CIOs, the CTOs, they're able now to have all of that data there for planning and investment management, which is really the major function for today that we're talking about. And it's the only platform in the world that can really do that.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much. When we look at the investment planning, we look at financials, it's a strategic decision. And so that's such a very valuable point. That's what application portfolio management, business capability planning is all about. Strategically identifying what are the new capabilities, what are the gaps we have in terms of capabilities in the organization. That's going to drive technology and application investments. that feeds in here as part of the overall single platform. So the underlying thing here is that to have the end-to-end picture, organizations typically have that today, but they typically have 5, 10, 20 different solutions, different integrations, swivel chair, dual entry going on, but now I can have it on one single solution and drive tremendous value just from visibility purposes alone. I'm just going to go to the next slide here. So what I wanted to highlight next is just some of the additional capabilities here for ITPM, and then we'll go in and show you a demonstration. So we talked a little bit about Innovation Portal. We're seeing an example of that here, this whole idea of capturing the demand. It's really critical to make sure that you're able to encourage the organization and that they have a simple, easy way to get all the demand in. That way we don't have shadow investments or shadow discussions, shadow things going on. That way executives can get access to all the great ideas and identify what are the right things to invest time in versus things being wasted or spent time on. And then they're presented later and then it was out of alignment and we just lost out on that particular investment opportunity. You know, we've been talking a lot about here from a prioritization perspective. So what's nice here on the platform, whether it be at the demand stage or whether it be at the project stage or at the portfolio stage, or whether it be bringing that up across the enterprise, you're able to get these similar views of looking at your planned financial costs, your budgets, your actuals, your return on investment. Not only looking at the financials, but then looking at the resource side. As we all know, that's a critical component. In a lot of my years of transformation, a lot of times organizations have the funding, but they don't have the resources. So they plan to drive X amount of results. They are committing to the street that they're going to accomplish various initiatives throughout the year, but then they realize they don't have the visibility into resource gaps. If they had that visibility, they could go procure those resources or recruit those resources in different ways. So that's another critical piece here about protecting your financial investments. And then we've talked about just the whole idea of protecting those just from an execution perspective. And typically what we see is that organizations that aren't 100% agile typically have executives and PMO that still need to report the traditional way, but we need to enable the actual delivery teams to function in a more agile fashion. And so that's what you get with ServiceNow, your ability to have that overall investment planning, funding, and looking at that overall cost and benefit information, while at the same time equipping the delivery teams with the methods and tools of choice that they can use to deliver on those outcomes, but yet still have that roll-up reporting from a financial perspective across the organization. And we see that here further in this slide. And then, as I was mentioned before, it's really important to have that visibility into the resources. We can't deliver on these investments without internal or external resources. For those of you that be unaware of the ITBM suite of solutions, we kind of saw those in the various functions that you perform, but here you look at it from an overall capability and module perspective. So we have the application portfolio management, around those managing the capabilities, managing your technology portfolio as well as your application portfolio. Investment funding. We'll see in the middle here the demand management, the resource, the project portfolio, and the financials. Obviously, you can do time cards. We're seeing that kind of go away a little bit with organizations. So there's some unique ways that you can do time capture, if you will, but not in the traditional sense. Then we've got Agile, whether it be traditional Agile or safe, and test management capabilities. So this is kind of the suite of capabilities here for IT business management. What we're going to focus on are the items here in bluish gray as part of the demonstration. But also just to let you know, it's growing here on this solution on the platform. So it's definitely hydrated from the various industry analysts. I would say that Gartner didn't have them on the chart for quite a while, and that was because they were only looking at niche providers that were only providing PPM type solutions. So now they're starting to be recognized for the power and the capabilities that they have. So we're going to jump into the demonstration. Yes, go ahead.
One key thing here that I think is extremely important to that point with regard to Gartner Traditionally you have to have a solution out there for about 4 years in the market before Gartner will even recognize you. So, part of the reason that Gartner didn't have ServiceNow listed was because some of the capabilities were fairly new and a while back. But, one key point there, even beyond the ITBM suite, ServiceNow is one of the only platforms out there that holistically as a singular platform is actually on 4 or more Magic Quadrants. So from an ITSM perspective, a GRC, an ITBM, various components of the platform are recognized as leaders, and that's pretty unheard of from a platform perspective. So, their continuity of service throughout the entire platform is pretty amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Thanks for adding that. But you're exactly right. It is amazing, all in one platform. And as organizations are doing their overall IT transformation or the digital imperative, a lot of them are looking at how do we consolidate? How do we just use a couple different platforms, right? They're looking at something on the ERP side of things. They might be still be looking at something in the CRM. But then from a ServiceNow perspective, they're starting to help organizations. How do you manage all of your end-to-end work? How do you manage all your end-to-end workflow at the same time having these industry-leading solutions on the platform? So I'm going to jump in here and do a brief walkthrough. So I've logged in here, and what we're seeing here is the PMO dashboard. So this is out of the box capability, and so there's a lot of power here in this capability. As we know, it's all about getting the data in. But having that data in from looking at your demands, looking at your projects is the information that's underlying the visualizations here. I'm starting to look at and kind of view the trend of the information that's coming in across the enterprise. In this particular example, I can slice and dice the information. So I'm looking at our IT application modernization portfolio, and I'm seeing the number of projects. I'm seeing the overall planned costs, benefits, actual costs, etc., related to our current investments. Here again, I could look at this and change this and apply this just dynamically here across the enterprise, and I can then start to see some of the trending information here. Are we increasing in the number of projects? Are we decreasing? What's our planned cost? So this here is highlighting some of the performance analytics capabilities, which is built onto the platform. And that's very powerful. You can identify specific indicators. We talk about outcomes. We talk about key measures that you want to accomplish in your organization. You can define those indicators, and then you can track and view the results of those indicators on a historical basis here using performance analytics. So an example of that here is to kind of look at the pipeline. A lot of times, organizations don't have visibility. A lot of times executives don't realize, the number of demands, or excuse me, in this case, ideas coming in from an ideation perspective. How many of those ideas are coming in across the different business units or departments, right? So we can kind of look at that, see the trend of what's coming in. We could also drill into that. So that's what's nice here with ServiceNow, everything I can drill into here. Next, we can look at all the different demands. We can see the demand flow. The process by which we're managing demands and screening them and qualifying and prioritizing those. We can also do the same thing here and look at the number of demands coming in by overall business unit. Next and last here, we can kind of look at all the different projects. We can see where they're at in terms of state perspective, and then slice and dice the information. I can also then here with one click here look at all the actual projects that are associated with it. So a lot of different capabilities here, and fully drillable to get you to the actual data. Next, we talk about protecting your investments. So it's a great way here to really assess the performance of your project investments in your portfolio. So we can look at the health and see the health trend over time. But typically, right, we're going to look at on time, on budget, those type of indicators and KPIs. So you can see that here, projects that might be running late, missed milestones. Here we might have projects that are over budget as an example. Here we have underallocated resources. Here we've got allocated versus actuals. Real key indicators here of resource utilization. So these are some out-of-the-box indicators to help you protect and manage the performance of your projects. Here again, you could add additional indicators here as well. Next, we can come over and look at from a data quality perspective. We know that what hinders some organizations from using the data to make decisions is the quality of the data. And so ServiceNow has identified various attributes of your demands and projects, gives the PMO and others visibility into key data elements that haven't been applied or updated into the different demands and projects. That way, when you view this and get this cleaned up, then you're confident that you have accurate data that you can make business decisions. Next, we see here, if we kind of look at some of the high-level plan versus actual, whether it be from a financial perspective as well from a resource management perspective. So this is very powerful that I can use this. I can filter this across different dimensions, and this is all available out of the box. Next, I wanted to go in and continue kind of this high-level top-down view as we're talking about how do we really invest wisely and optimize the outcomes. So I'm going to go in here and look at this HR portfolio. So these are user-defined investment portals. And what we see is we see many organizations as part of their strategic planning committees, they set up a different portal here as they walk through the different agendas in their meetings, and then they can toggle over here to different other portals as they are making decisions across their portfolio. Here again, you could bring this and have a whole enterprise view of all of your demands and projects. So what you're seeing here is all your demands and projects that are flowing in the system, and you can basically, any attribute, when this is very powerful, that you don't need a separate reporting tool for this, but every attribute that you would use to assess your demands and your projects can be listed here as a column. So I'm just showing a couple of them here, highlighting some out-of-the-box attributes. So if we look at it here, we've got the name of our demands or our projects. We can have it aligned to the business strategy, right? We want to make sure that we're going to invest in the right items. Here we're looking at it from a program perspective, what program it might be part of, which department is this investment for, and then we've got a couple investment class and investment type. So is this to help run the business, change or transform the business? Here from an investment type perspective, we have, is this going to be for legal and user revenue generating, whatever the case may be. Here we can look at it from a priority perspective. We can also kind of view from an overall status. And last but not least, we can see the plan cost, estimate completion, ROI, etc. So it's a great way to kind of present to the committee. Here's what we're looking at spending. Up above, we can see the number of demands and projects, the cost, the budget, the actuals associated with that.
Quick question for you. Sorry to interrupt. Are these fields customizable?
Yes, they are. So you can customize your different attributes, and without any coding here, I can select any field. I can actually come down here and add a custom column and add that here. They've also set it up so you can customize and create your own KPIs up here. And they built it specifically for that, so that this can be specific to your organization. There's specific KPIs you're looking at managing so that you optimize your investments. Very good question. So typically what happens in these meetings, right, is without this solution, you've created your PowerPoint decks and you've identified, hey, here's a list of demands and here's a little bit of the categories of those. So if we were investing in this, we're going to help a little bit in this area or that area, but you don't have all the information. It would take a long time to pull that all together. But typically, no matter what you've shared with them, they're going to ask you a question that you're going to have to follow up with. But here in the platform, you can actually answer those questions with a click. So they might come in here and say, well, this looks really good. I understand the overall cost and budget associated with this. Let's go and look at, okay, but how much are we going to spend by each strategy of the organization? So with one click here, I can look at all of the corporate strategies and I can answer the question. 1.6 for operational efficiency, 3 million here for grow the business, unmatched customer service, simplification, move to the cloud. So I can answer those questions. Then they're going to ask, well, what are the different projects that we're going to be delivering those? And I got that visibility here at my fingertips. They might also ask other questions. Well, which one of those are going to help us run the business or change the business? So I can look at it by strategy, look at the breakdown here of the 1.6 million. How much is that going to help us run the business? How much here to help change or transform the business? So I can get that visibility here, answer those questions on the fly, and then come back here and continue on with the discussion here. You can see here that I can actually adjust how I want this to lay out. So you can move things around, adjust it exactly how you want it, and then you can save the layout. So the next time I come in here, it's going to be back to my original layout and be able to have the same conversation again. So very powerful here that I can slice and dice the information. Here again, they might ask and say, okay, which one of these are going to be investments in our different investment types? So what's going to drive end user experience, legal, cost reduction, revenue generating? So you can view that here with a click, and then look at the individual projects that are going to drive the end user experience. Here again, remember this one's from an HR portfolio, so you're probably going to do more in that particular area than others, but that's how you can come in and really look at your investments, help make those prioritization and overall approval decisions. While you're doing that, you can also then come over here to the timeline view and look at all those demands and projects, look at it from a timeline perspective. If the team's got various key milestones, here you can view those and really start to look at a high level the timing of things. Executives might determine that they want to move things out so they don't have a lot of things going live at the same time, but gives you that roadmap view here across the different initiatives. Here again, we can easily toggle to different views, so I kind of get that annual view of what we're going to release. So that's key here as well. And then last but not least is looking at from a detailed financial perspective. As we know, a lot of organizations really focus on maximizing CapEx, or maybe they're going to focus on maximizing OpEx, or a combination thereof. Typically, organizations also kind of want to look at a year-over-year view. So we can kind of see that year-over-year view. And what we're looking at here is definitely projects and demands. But within each project and demand, you can create what they call cost plans. So that can be your labor forecast and costs, as well as your non-labor forecasts and costs. So we can view that information here at the detail level. But you might want to ask the question, so of this, how much is going to be CapEx in the organization? Now, you've got CapEx and OpEx up here, so maybe that's not as important. But then I wanted to get the next layer down because I want to look at the different cost types, so the different types of labor and non-labor. And then from there, I can actually see which particular projects require hardware costs, which projects require software. So nice visibility here so that you understand and have that visibility into what you're investing in, how it's going to impact your capitalization, your depreciation in the organization, or how it's going to impact your OpEx expenditures. So very powerful here to be able to slice and dice the information. And then I think as part of the question, you can put together your own KPI widgets here, as well as if you want, you can remove those to show more of the information below. So that's also available. For a lot of our customers, we typically configure a few of these as part of implementation. A lot of times customers want to understand what's the current planned spend this month versus last month, what's the variance, same thing for year over year. So you can do that at a high level up here. Yes, you've got it down here, but a lot of times you might not have the overall total. So this is set up specifically so you can configure and create your own KPIs here from a financial perspective. So I'm going to pause there, see if we have any other questions.
One question I have is we've been asked to how we could output some of this, like for leadership to get, I mean, some of them still want to see it like in a PDF and an email as an example.
Right. Yeah, a very, very good point. So here in this specific view here, and across the platform, there's different ways of getting the information. Different areas you can get a PDF, different areas you can get Excel. In this case, I can take this whole list here and I can export it to Excel. So I click on that, I can export it to Excel. If I wanted to, I can make it prettier. And I would then be able to see that whole entire list here of all my projects, all that information shown here with one click to put it in Excel. So that's key as well. What we've also done, this technology here, if you're not familiar or not, this is using ServiceNow's Service Portal technology. which is really their application development tools. So you can kind of create your own visualization. So we've established for customers one-page project status reports, just like you'd have in PowerPoint, but here on the platform, one-page views. Those we have them set up so you can actually, save that as PDF and then distribute that off to executives. So a lot of capabilities here. In our 15 years doing project portfolio management systems, typically this was, you had to pull it off into a different data warehouse and do reporting against. So very powerful that you can do that. It's all here. I can export the data out. And then just that power of creating specific views and specific functions using the service portal technology, but you're not limiting yourself in terms of upgrades. So very powerful. Great question.
John,
Yes.
One other addition to that, and I talk about this because it's definitely something that I went through. When I was rolling out PPM from a client perspective, my CIO was having a 4-hour monthly meeting with all the PMs and all the dev leads and everything, and they were taking and creating the data for that meeting, and it was taking tons of hours to prep for the 4-hour meeting, not to mention the 4-hour meeting itself. When we transitioned into ServiceNow, obviously he wanted printout copies and things like that he could look at and distribute. But one of the major factors that I was trying to drive for him as well was to actually get into the tool. Because of the drill down capability, he wouldn't have to ask some of those follow-up questions to say, hey, can you tell me why this is red, or can you tell me why this is on hold? He could literally, as he's actively in that meeting, drill down into the detail and find out why and answer the question in that meeting, as opposed to waiting until later and then potentially even forgetting about the questions that were valid. So, definitely the capability is there to export that data. One thing that I do try to work with clients on is making sure that also that they don't lose the power of a static report is just that, it's a static report. But the portal, the widgets and all that from a ServiceNow portal perspective gives you the ability to now make decisions and action that data, as opposed to just a static report that may not have all the answers.
Yeah, a very good point, Andy. Along that line, what we've typically found, because in PPM solutions, a lot of times the issue is organizational change. So it's not the technology. And the good news with ServiceNow, we're seeing a lot of organizations that like to use the technology. It's easy to use, they're familiar with it. But above and beyond that, what we found, if you're to do one thing to help organizational change, is to allow the executives, the decision makers, to use the solution as they're making these decisions. Like you just mentioned, you got real-time visibility, you can answer all the questions through drilling in. But if the executives are using the system to make decisions, and the organization knows that and knows, whenever those meetings are, and I experienced this when I was using the system and managing an organization, that it's amazing how you'll get the adoption when the organization knows that they're making decisions based upon the data that project managers, that the various business relationship managers and others that are estimating these various initiatives. If executives are using the information, it's amazing how adoption will occur. So if you're to do one thing that would really accelerate adoption, is to make sure that these are being used in those meetings, or the information is being used in those meetings. But real-time wise, you can't get better with having access to everything to answer the questions. That way you're not going to have delays in those decisions, because part of what we're talking about here is if you have a delay in making a decision because we need to wait 2 weeks, or we need to wait 2 or 3 days to go export the data and reformat it and create an updated report, if we can do that real time, we've now saved 2 weeks of investment in something that's not going to drive as much value versus the current initiative that's being considered. So very valuable point. So that's when we look at things from an overall investment portal perspective. One of the next things that I wanted to go look at here is the, I'm going to go to a different user here. So I'm going to go to a business relationship manager. And the other thing I wanted to do from a top-down perspective is kind of help you with that strategic planning using the portfolio workbench. So as we just mentioned, we just viewed the investment portal. It's very powerful to give you access to the information you need. Helps as part of that, those strategic review boards as an example. You might feed into those boards. You might have your overall portfolio managers doing some various what-if analysis to really determine what can we invest in based upon our overall financial and resource constraints. So I'd come in here and select one of the different portfolios, and I could start to perform some what-if analysis. Now, this is currently done by fiscal year. I would anticipate they're probably going to adjust that. What we're finding with organizations, yes, organizations typically still do some form of annual planning, but the smart organizations will start seeing they're assessing and doing their planning on a monthly basis. We know that things change. We know the market changes. And so they want to make sure that they're always investing in the right initiatives and stopping those that might no longer be invalid. So here at the overall portfolio workbench, we have some great capabilities here as well. First of all, I could look at risk versus value across all the demands and kind of see what they are here. I could even drill into this information as well. So Andy's point in terms of drillability. Next here, we can look at it from an overall timeline perspective. Here again, it shows that I could rank these from 1 to 10 here in the portfolio. I can bring in additional data elements here if I wanted to. For demo purposes, I don't bring that in. I kind of want to look at the overall timeline associated with these. So I can have demands and projects here. You'll see that last time we were here, we already funded and approved a few items that are already selected here. As a result of those selections, we can see our overall spend. We can also see our resource capacity. So that's really critical in making these decisions. From a demo perspective, I'll come over here and make this real time. So at this point, we can come over here. If we wanted to, let's go and sort this by priority. I can now look at all the priority 1 items here and say, okay, I think we need to invest in these priority 1 items. So here I can come in and select each individual one. When I do that, it's going to update my financials and my resource view here on the right-hand side, as you can see. So it starts to give me that view into, do I have enough resources? In this case, we're overall a budget, but might say, you know what, we need to invest in that because it's critical to the organization. So that's how I can kind of perform that what-if analysis. I can actually come in here and change the dates and move some of these demands and move them out and see what the impact would be from a cost and an overall resource perspective. So I can dynamically make those changes. I could start from scratch here and assume that we need to replan and analyze our investments every time or every month, so we can come in here and validate those overall investments. So as I mentioned, you can use this for annual planning. You could use it to come in for those new demands and see which ones would help fit within your overall financial budgets for each portfolio. Once you identify the set of demands and projects you want to fund and approve, of these various demands, you can see here, I don't have some of those selected right now. We can come over here and select a couple of the demands here, include them here in this set of approved projects. So I can approve those. I can come over and hit confirm. What confirm is going to do, it's going to approve those demands. It's going to then automatically create a project, and then we can notify the project managers to start initiating and planning those particular projects. As we see over here on the side, right, it gives us visibility into our different resource capacity we can see up above here, as well as the demand. We can also then look at it from a utilization perspective. So depending on how you are planning your resources, either at the role or the group level, I can get a heat map here to understand overall utilization. Here we're doing it from a group level for a lot of our Agile development. Down here we're seeing an actual named resource as well. So it gives you a lot of view into your resource constraints as well. So very powerful tool here to help kind of augment the investment portal that we were highlighting before. And then if I come back here and I'll go back here to a dashboard page. So we talked about the importance of demand management, how demand management really is key in helping you make sure you're going to invest in the right things, avoid investing in things that are going to take funds away from those initiatives that are going to drive the best value. So this is a configured dashboard page, so you can configure these dashboard pages here to support various roles. So we do that as part of our rapid start implementations that include some configured dashboard pages like you see here to help organizations get the visibility they need and drive the adoption. So here I can come in and look at, okay, what are all these different demands here in the system? I can then see here's all the demands that are being managed. And I've got a lot of the high level information. And this is kind of another way of looking at reporting, right? We've got the high level, nice graphical view dashboards, but you can create one of these lists. You can save these here. So I could click over here as a saved list, same information, but just looking at it from a different angle. I could change and add different columns that I want to use. But what's really powerful here is that I could look at this here and say, okay, I want to export this list to Excel, or I want to export this list to PDF. So I can do that here with one click. If I wanted to, I could look at this as a visual task board. So that's kind of taking traditional work, transforming it into a Kanban board is what you would see there. Or if I want to make this as a report, I could quickly turn this into a bar chart or a pie chart here and turn it into an actual report and then put it on a dashboard page like we were seeing here before. So in this case, it was looking at all active demands. I can see that here. I click on overall pipeline forecast. I could drill into that, see all the different projects that make up that overall forecast. As you'd expect, right, you can slice and dice the data. So based upon your different attributes of your demands, I can look at which business applications would be investing in, what business capabilities are we trying to drive strategically. I can also then get visibility here of just looking at month by month or a cost trend or a resource forecast as well. We talked a little bit about the Kanban boards. So we see some organizations like to use a Kanban boards as a stand-up, say if they're project review meetings or for some of their resource allocation meetings as well. So it's a great way to manage typical traditional work, but in a Kanban board, I can drag and drop. Yeah, right. I can also, assign resources to actually work on the work as well. So the next thing here that you can also do here, once you've created demands in the system, I can have another way of looking at that risk and value chart that we saw in the portfolio workbench. I can also do that here in the demand workbench. Down below here, I can look at all the different demands here. I can look at the risk and value scores of these demands. And these scores could come from actual surveys. You could actually send out surveys to the business, have them rate and rank this particular idea, this demand, and get their feedback to help really make an educated decision on which one of these demands we should invest in. So a lot of different ways to look at managing your investments. So typically customers ask us, well, what are the next steps? How do I get access to these capabilities? And so we obviously have the more traditional come in, do an assessment, get an overall roadmap. But many organizations are like, you know what, it's urgent now. That time is urgent now. And within a week or two, sometimes 2 or 3 weeks, we could actually be starting an actual implementation. We have our rapid start implementation offerings. Those start with 6, 8, 10-week implementations to get you access to this capability so that you can start making more informed business decisions. So some of the common next steps, we could do a deep dive demo with you and your organization to really understand your specific requirements. We could discuss those requirements and outcomes, quickly turn that into a proposal. We can also work with ServiceNow to do a business value assessment. That'll help give you inputs into an actual business case for the solution itself, as well as compare that against the cost of the solution as well as the cost of the implementation. So I'm going to pause there and open it up to Andy, see if there's anything you'd like to mention, Andy, in terms of common next steps with our customers.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, right? It's finding out what the needs are, working with each individual to know, is there an overhaul that's needed, right? Or is it more of a implementation of a key component that's missing right now? A lot of times what I will do as well is kind of go in, do a quick review of the processes that are being discussed, for instance, demand management, idea management, and try to figure out where the quick hits are. A lot of times it's in understanding where even the unplanned work is happening in an organization because of investments being made unknowingly, and try to understand where those pieces are and see if it is transformative or see if it is the quick hit type of a thing, especially in an environment like now, where we just need to get our hands on one aspect. So those are discussions that we can definitely have as follow-ups. Happy to do so and continue to partner with ResultsPositive on this particular aspect of the platform.
Thank you so much, Andy. Really appreciate it. Want to appreciate those that have participated today.